Great. Thank you so much, President Tomiota. Chairman Fukao, President Tomiota, everyone at Rieti, and also those participating in this seminar, both in person and online. Thank you so much for taking the time to give me a chance to speak to this great sort of audience on these issues that I have been spending a lot of time thinking about. I guess to build on what President Tomiota's introduction, Japan has a new prime minister, a historically important first female prime minister who has a very proactive and sort of ambitious political and economic agenda. Also, we have, President Trump has now been in office for the second time for 10 months. And I think at this point we have a clearer understanding about his methods, his priorities, his way of engaging with partners. And so I think, and this is on top of some of the things that I've also been observing from Washington, from my work at Hudson, on how U.S.-Japan relations have changed. And I think they have changed in, maybe in the past 5 or 10 years. Part of it is due to Japan's own increased capabilities and commitments regionally and globally, but it's also because I think the nature of the atmosphere in international relations have also changed. And so I think the real question is, I think we all understand how important the U.S.-Japan relationship is towards building a secure and prosperous region as well as globally. And I think there are some ways that we can continue to find positive ways to look forward and to work together toward these worthy ends, especially in an increasingly uncertain and challenging world. So I really appreciate the chance to give this talk today. So I think I would first like to begin with sort of a quick analysis of what have we learned so far in the first 10 months in Trump 2.0. I think the foremost thing that I think we recognize this at the time, but I think has been extremely clear in the past 10 months, is that the Trump administration has a real desire to rebalance in terms of obligations and responsibilities, right? I think the old post-war consensus where the U.S. was carrying much of the lion's share on military, financial, economic security, I think that has changed. Part of it is because other countries have sort of increased their influence and power. Part of it is also because the American government and American people also want to work on their own capabilities. And also I think it's partly because our friends have also shown that they are no longer recovering from the war, and they are influential powers in their own right. So I think one of the major priorities of the Trump administration is to make sure that responsibilities for supporting this global order is shared with our friends and allies as well. And I think that's evident in terms of the security rebalancing issue, which I think has been very noticeable. Obviously, I think over the summer there was the announcement by NATO, especially over concerns over the Russia-Ukraine war, for NATO to increase its defense spending from 3.5%, to 5%, right? 3.5% on military spending, and then 1.5% on supporting military capability spending. And I think that has been a general trend. I think the administration has responded positively by, showing support for Ukraine and being directly involved in sort of the negotiation process, which obviously we know is very complicated. And I think President Trump just responded by sanctioning Russian oil. At the same time, I think the administration has shown its most of its efforts on economic issues as well. And I think in that case, that's part of this larger study. I think that former Council of Economic Advisors Chairman Stephen Myron showed in his report back in October 2024, and then later in a speech at Hudson Institute back in April 2025, where he talks about a need for economic rebalancing, right? One is that in his mind, the U.S. has provided a great deal of military security since the end of the war, as well as financial security, right, through the use of the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, right, which brings confidence and assurance to global financial transactions. That is the basis for all of our economic activity as well as trade. And so I think in order to address this American contributions in their minds, this American contribution towards global security, both in military as well as financial security, Dr. Myron recommended a number of different solutions, right? One is tariffs, right, which we have seen in terms of the trade deals and the tariff rollout program since April 2nd of this year. But it's also through trade negotiations for greater market access. And we saw that with Japan, with South Korea, with the European Union. And then also things such as purchases, right, to essentially transfer payments that support American goods, American industrial production, to ensure that there is greater balance in terms of support for America's obligations. And so I think this is a major part of their economic strategy in terms of rebalancing the obligations and responsibilities in the world. Well, the other thing that we've also learned from the Trump administration is, I think in terms of his priorities in this administration are reindustrialization of America, technological leadership, and also his own personal historical legacy. And so in terms of industrial and technological security leadership, I think we've spent a lot of time talking about tariffs. But I think, as I've argued before, I think the administration, while tariffs are the most visible part of its economic program, there's actually a larger issue about industrial policy and industrial investment, as well as economic security. And I think tariffs, economic security, and industrial investment are all interconnected parts of this iron triangle that they're looking at. And so tariffs are merely a tool. The end goal, I think, is still to increase American industrial capacity, right? Part of it is to use tariffs to remake the global order, to make it more friendly to American production, to American goods, greater market access, and to address unfair players in the global system. The other thing is also to increase American capacity. As president during COVID, he saw firsthand the impact of how global supply chains can imperil political objectives, right? So I think a lot of this push towards industrial production as well as technological leadership is founded on this desire to ensure economic security and to protect the American supply chain and American industrial landscape free from coercion, which I think, as we've seen from China in the past several weeks, is still an area of weakness for the United States. The second point is his sense of history. I think President Trump enters this administration with full knowledge that he wants to cement his own place in history, and so he will do that by, one, remaking the global trade order, right? Through this extensive series of trade deals with other countries to create a new tariff regime. Two is also to rebuild American industrial power, and I think President Trump, in his mind, I think he values technological leadership, but he also values just traditional material industrial power, right? Things like steel and automobiles and those kind of things. So for him, I think it's important to have both cutting-edge software and non-material technological leadership, as well as more traditional material industrial power. And then three, I think, in terms of his sense of history, is his role as peacemaker. And I think this has been very obvious. Even before he was looking to become a Nobel Peace Prize recipient, he has been very aggressive on sort of focusing on peace, right? I think that's evident through his negotiation of the Israel-Gaza-Hamas ceasefire, his efforts to continue to devote energy to the Russia-Ukraine conflict and trying to find peace there, even despite Vladimir Putin's frequent vacillations and false starts. And I think he has also expressed interest in terms of working on peace in the Korean Peninsula. I will say that I think, for instance, when President Lee of South Korea met with President Trump, I thought it was very wise of him to praise Trump for his peacemaking efforts, because I think that's very much along the lines of how the president sees himself. And so this is part of his sense of history. This is the historical legacy he wants to leave, as well as get a Nobel Peace Prize. And then finally, I think in terms of what we've learned from Trump 2.0 is, and this isn't so much that we've learned, it's really more that we are reminded of, is that how much of personal diplomacy is central to his approach, right? This is someone who values personal relationships, interactions with foreign leaders. When we look at the strike on Iran over the summer, I think a lot of people were asking, "Oh, is Trump now a neocon? Is he now a hawk?" And one, I think that kind of definition, I think, is not effective when talking about Donald Trump's foreign policy. I think rather it was more that he was very dedicated towards finding a peaceful solution between Israel and Iran, and he gave them 60 days to try to come to an agreement. Iran refused to participate and treat the negotiations seriously. That was effectively an insult that they did not trust his ability to help deliver this kind of peace that he was seeking. And so when Israel hit Iran on day 61, after on the first day after the deadline, the White House was very agreeable to it, and America followed up with its own strike on Iran afterwards. And so I think that sort of shows the degree to which personal diplomacy matters in this administration. That said, there are some challenges with this administration, right? One is that I think because this administration knows that President Trump, this will be his last term, they have many things that they want to achieve, and they have limited resources, both in terms of time, energy, and manpower. And so the best example, I think, is certainly I think shipbuilding is a ongoing priority for the administration. This is something that we keep hearing over and over again when we were talking to folks within the administration in Washington. However, the shipbuilding office, that was constructed in the spring, lacks personnel. Its leader has left. Its primary political backer, who was former National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, is now at the UN. And so you're seeing this challenge where there are ambitions that the administration wants to achieve, but it's not quite able to marshal it because its efforts are spread so thin. And so I think this is an area where, I think other departments have taken on this role in terms of boosting American shipbuilding, but at the same time, things like shutting down USAID, which provided a lot of the shipping contracts for the American merchant marine, which we keep around in the United States as a way to ensure that we have the necessary sea lift in case there is ever a conflict in the Western Pacific. The lack of shipments for USAID missions makes it complicated to support the U.S. merchant marine, right? So these are things where they are very ambitious. They have lots of goals, but sometimes they conflict. And I think there needs to be some effort to sort of deconflict them or set certain priorities. The other thing in terms of challenges that we've learned from the second Trump administration is that they will demand constant energy and engagement. This has been very obvious in terms of the trade deals, where we may have negotiated them back in July 2022. But in terms of actually hammering out the actual terms, right, in terms of the 50% Section 232 tariffs on automobiles, on the $550 billion strategic investment fund between the U.S. and Japan, that still took another 6 weeks and possibly longer to negotiate. This is an administration that will oftentimes focus on sort of setting out priorities and then letting officials on the working level to work out over time. And so this is a administration that will demand constant engagement with its key partners and allies. That said, at the same time, they are also very open to ideas, right? I think this is evident through two examples. One is the automotive tariff offset program that was first introduced in April of this year and then recently updated, I think, 2 weeks ago, I think. That essentially says that, yes, we will have a 25% Section 232 tariff on automobiles that are imported into the United States. But if you are in the process of relocating some of your plants into the United States, then we will give you certain levels of tariff credit. and up to, say, 2027. And then 2 weeks ago, that deadline was extended to 2030. And this is obviously through the response of, obviously, I'm sure, European automakers, but also through entities such as JAMA, the Japan Automotive Manufacturers Association, right? So I think this demonstrates a willingness of the administration to respond to industry concerns or governmental concerns and needs. The other example is also the potential tariff adjustments for aligned partners, PTAP. This was announced in early September, where essentially what they said was, things, yes, we may have a tariff on a country for, X percent, 25%, let's just say. But if they produce certain things that we cannot make in America, right? We literally cannot make in America, like coffee, right? Then maybe we can lower those tariff rates to most favored nation levels if you make a trade deal with us. So the priority is still making a trade deal with the United States, but if you are willing to show the good faith to make a trade deal with the United States, then we will adjust the tariff rate accordingly for key items that we realistically know that we cannot make in the United States. And then finally, related to, I guess, continuous engagement, and this is sort of a play on what Prime Minister Takaichi said the other day, lots of frequent conversations, right? This goes back to the fundamental fact that he is very much invested in personal diplomacy. We all know how often he and former Prime Minister Abe talked on the phone all the time. They were golfing buddies. I expect that the leaders that he has the closest relationship with in the world, right? So the NATO Secretary General, the German Chancellor, the Italy's Prime Minister, hopefully Prime Minister Takaichi, he has an ongoing conversational relationship. And it doesn't always have to be about policy. Oftentimes he'll just call them up and ask them for opinions on what he should do about this government shutdown, which is a purely domestic issue. But he values these kind of personal relationships, right? So Prime Minister Takaichi said that she will work. She is going to be number one in terms of work, if she wants to support this U.S.-Japan relationship. And so I realize that Prime Minister Takaichi has just come into office. So I think over time we will sort of have to see sort of what her policy rollout is. Obviously, with a new coalition partner that they need more experience working with, I think there will definitely be things that they will need to negotiate. Plus, there are still very powerful, influential figures within the LDP that will shape the direction of policy. But broadly, I think this is probably a part where I don't really need to speak as much, given that you likely probably know more about these issues than I do. But in terms of her priorities, right? Certainly, it's about revitalizing the Japanese economy. I think this is clearly tied to really the domestic policy, domestic political issue, right? Obviously, I think it's fair to say that it is probably over. I would say everyday economics. I think in America we call it kitchen table economics, right? Cost of living issues that I believe that the LDP lost the upper house elections back in July. I think that was a major part, right? There was also other social issues that I think played a part. And so that's obviously why Prime Minister Takaichi talked about making economics a priority, especially everyday economics, right? Because without that, her party and her coalition cannot have the mandate to actually implement their larger policy goals. The other thing I think is very evident in terms of revitalizing the Japanese economy is the integration of both security and economics. And I think this is an area where, frankly, we in the United States are very blind to, right? We still have this outdated thinking of that, you can separate defense security from economics and obviously economic security. But I think based on what she said during the campaign, given her past work as a Minister of Economic Security, I think she very much understands the integration of both security and economics, and partly as a way to drive Japanese growth through increased corporate R&D, and hopefully for sort of essentially market-breaking industries that will allow the Japanese economy to revitalize itself. Certainly that is the aim. right? I think she is very ambitious in this regard. Of course, that means corporate support for these policies, and I think that is something that certainly I think we will wait to see. I think there has been this consistent push by the Japanese government for Japanese industry to invest more capacity. My understanding is that Japanese companies have really slashed their capacity to the point where there's only like maybe 2% excess capacity in certain industries. And if Japan is going to be a world-class economic power again, I think creating the conditions and the confidence to invest in more capacity is crucial, right? And I think recent news of, for instance, Japan's sale of Mogami frigates to first the Australians and then possibly now with the New Zealanders is a step in the right direction. But there has to be government industry coordination to build that kind of corporate confidence to create more investment. And I think just to stick with shipping, I think for instance the LDP white paper back in June on shipbuilding, right? The idea of government investment in shipyards and then consigning them to private companies to operate. That is at least, whether if you think that's a good idea or not, it at least shows that there is active political thinking on this front. Obviously, the second priority is obviously a good working relationship with President Trump. I think through the selection of Ministers Akazawa and Motegi, it's who have direct experience working with the Trump administration both this year and also in the past administration, shows that it's clear that she is prioritizing a good relationship with the United States, effective relationships with the United States. And I think it's clear that she understands that. And then three, ultimately, I think this kind of relates to the first point, where is the priority is to create stable leadership, right? The current margin of a majority in not even technically a minority in the Diet is a real challenge. We oftentimes, I think during the LDP election, I think a lot of the American commentators were all debating, who is the best, match for Trump, right? Is it Motegi Sensei? Is it Koizumi Sensei, right? And I think I kind of just responded with, I don't think that any of this matters, right? Like, I think there's a good chance that Takeichi Shusho has a good relationship with Trump, given their similarities on priorities on economic growth and strong borders and strong defense. But I mean, you can see this from President Trump's meeting with then Prime Minister Ishiba back in February, right? He talked about how strong he was domestically and how much former Prime Minister Abe respected Prime Minister Ishiba, and obviously we all know that those two did not get along, right? And look, I think President Trump knew that too, or certainly he was briefed on that. But I think in his mind, he saw it as, I have to strengthen Prime Minister Ishiba's position, because if he is not strong domestically, then all the deals that we are going to make, he will not be able to deliver, right? Because he will not have the political power to do so. And so I think it is a similar situation here. I am hopeful that Takeichi Shusho has a good relationship with Trump, but the most effective way to deliver that is to have a strong domestic political position, so that she can deliver on win-win solutions for both countries, and that will strengthen the alliance overall. I realize I'm going a little bit long at this point. Yeah, I'm getting nods. Okay. Let me just quickly address this. I think there are multiple points of cooperation. One is in supply chain risks, which I think we're all aware of right now, in terms of rare earths and also the Nexperia cutoff in terms of legacy semiconductors. I think there is a need for greater information sharing and collection, either through direct government-to-government, business-to-business contacts, or through, I think, organizations like Rieti, which can manage think tank relationships between the U.S. and Japan. And I think that those are effective approaches, but to do so, we need to increase the level of information security so that our information security standards, both in the U.S. and Japan, match. Second, I think this is a major thing, a major pillar, is the $550 billion strategic investment fund between the United States and Japan. Key sectors are obviously critical minerals, shipbuilding, energy, AI, and semiconductors. I think there are a lot of questions. There are still a lot of things to be worked on at the government-to-government level. But I think it's important for Japanese government and especially Japanese industry to be proactive in recommending projects. Because I think this is a case where Japanese industries understand the U.S. market. They've been there for 30, 40, 50 years. They understand what needs investment. And so it is better that they can recommend investments that are win-win instead of, frankly, not doing anything and then possibly getting an angry tweet, an angry Truth Social post at 4 a.m., which I don't think would be good news for any of us. Three, I would say in terms of bilateral cooperation, certainly I think the new revision of the Foreign Exchange, Foreign Trade Act and CFIUS reforms, I think are positive ways of aligning our inbound and hopefully also outbound investments. And I think related to that is also making better use of private capital by both American private equity firms that are eager to invest in economic security initiatives, but they need better guidance from the U.S. government as well as the Japanese government, as well as utilizing Japanese trading firms, which I think the recent interview with Mitsui Chairman Yasunaga, did I get the name wrong? Is that the right name? Sorry, I apologize. The recent interview with the Mitsui chairman about where he talks about how they also will essentially try to function more as almost like a venture capital firm. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say private. Well, a hedge fund, whatever. And then finally, greater agreement on standards, right, such as connectivity for connected vehicles and EVs. I think standards will be a basis of future cooperation in terms of ensuring that our markets are protected from unfair competition. And I think that is an area where I know Japan has recently done some work on JC Star. We obviously have the ICTS sort of ruling back in January. I think that might be a good start. On multilateral points of cooperation, I think one thing I'll just say is that we have a chance in 2026 to talk about competing economic visions for the region and globally. China will be chairing APEC. The United States will be chairing the G20. And this is an opportunity for both countries to likely do a lot of public relations, public diplomacy competition, okay? And I think for Japan and the United States, we have to push forward a positive vision that showcases both negative aspects like PRC's economic distortion through the Belt and Road Initiative, through its sort of hollowing out of opposition of other countries' automotive markets through overproduction, and to show that there should be better, fairer standards that we should be striving for. There also are obviously friendshoring initiatives that are sort of multilateral. Obviously, the recent announcement of the Sojitz, JAGA, Alcoa gallium project in Australia is a great step in the right direction. I think as China continues to use this rare earths weapon over and over again, we will be reminded to do so again. And then finally, I think this is something based on a recent interview with President Tanaka of JICA. I think we need to think about new patterns of overseas economic development. Obviously, the United States has really cut down on USAID, but DFC is still there. And also, I think there are clear areas for both private and as well as public investment in, such as energy. I'm sorry, I misspelled that. I meant sovereign lending. I'm sorry, my apologies. And also administrative capacity, training of competent officials, competent and ethical officials in these emerging, in these middle income countries that are crucial towards ensuring continued following of the rule of law in the economic space. I think these are areas where we can all continue to cooperate. I just want to close with this final reflection on making the case for Japan and Washington. I think this is something that we frequently hear complaints about, certainly at the embassy, certainly at METSI and MOFA, is that there is a feeling that Japan is not sufficiently appreciated in Washington. And I think part of it is that I think the old assumptions that Japan is automatically an important ally, I think I think all of us in this room realize it. But I think we have to make a stronger case in real material terms to all stakeholders, right, by focusing on their needs first. And I think, the recent reaction by both Japanese and American voters on cost of living, quality of life issues is a great opportunity to talk about how, hey, Chinese unfair competition in the trade arena is creating a lot of challenges for ordinary Japanese and ordinary Americans. And so this is why, things like Japanese investment in the United States is important, or why U.S. Cooperation with Japan on technological developments like Rapidus up in Hokkaido is important, right? It does have real world kitchen table impact on ordinary Japanese and Americans. And I would say to do so, you need people who can do so effectively, make these arguments effectively. And I think oftentimes the complaint is that, we don't feel like our message is getting across. Yet they are still fairly consistent patterns of engagement that if the results are not matching the levels of engagement, then perhaps it is time to recalibrate. And I think part of that is developing more effective metrics, measurements of effective engagement. Second is, I think Japanese firms and Japanese government, they're in the United States, they're in Washington, but too oftentimes they're focused on information collection. I think for Japanese firms especially, if you're in Washington, yes, by all means, collect information. But you also have to be proactive, right? This is an administration that is very open to Japanese ideas. They are very open to good faith efforts to engage on their shared priorities. You have to be proactive, and you have to do it both in Washington and as well as in other parts of the United States. Right? We saw this through the Nippon Steel deal when I think it was the successful engagement of Senator David McCormick and other people within the Pennsylvania delegation on the state level that helped get that deal done. And then finally, person-to-person relations still matter, right? So your traditional mechanisms of, JET programs, Nippon Zaidan fellows, which I'm going to the event tonight, like these still matter, right? Because these become, the basis for relationships that will last for 30, 40, 50 years. You have to think long-term and systematically about them. And I think that is something that continues to be invested in, but maybe it has to be reoriented in a way that again, it goes back to the issue of metrics and that delivers real impactful results. And with that, I apologize for going far too long. Thank you very much.